All right, welcome to the Questionistas podcast. I'm Spencer.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Thomas.
Quick disclaimer, this is for educational and entertainment purposes. If you need help, please see a professional. We are not experts, doctors, nor dragons, nor do we give magical or medical advice. Take our words with a gallon of salt.
Now, Thomas, what's the question today?
Question is, how can I explore the question, who am I?
Now, this is a continuation of some of our past episodes where we've talked a little bit about identity, personality, and other aspects that come up when we talk about the word I, because it's an interesting phenomena where it's probably the most commonly used word or sound, but very few of us ever explore what are we actually talking about when we say I.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different interesting aspects to that. The first thing that just popped into my mind, which is funny because I just deleted it from the outline, is when you're looking at brains of humans and animals and things like that, we've developed extra brain parts that are like our rational conscious part.
Mm.
And a lot of times we think of that as the I. But like, what do animals think of as the I? A lot of them don't. Most of them probably don't.
We measured that in the I part of their brain.
Right, which most animals don't have.
And so in that hypothesis, the self-reflective part, or is that the prefrontal cortex for the brain people in the audience?
Yes.
So that little baby fist size part of our brain in the front, which takes all of the sensory inputs that it experiences and then bundles it together and believes that it forms a sense of self or a sense of identity based on the bodily and mental sensations.
I kind of liken it to the dashboard on a car. Like, let's say you have a car that's just runs itself or whatever, and then you had a dashboard which is looking at the car and how the car's running.
Ah.
But the dashboard, it is part of the car, but it's not the car.
My identity check engine light is on.
So one thing that we wanted to start with this is, and this is a good place to continue, is what are some different definitions for I? I think Spencer, you brought it up, the two different types of I, like in relation to Spanish. Am I throwing you under the bus, or am I correct?
Yeah, so it's not just the I. I mean, the I is universal, but it's the I am. That there's a temporary state of being and then a more permanent state of being. So I am hot, you would be a temporary I am statement. I am smart, or I am my name, or I am from this location would be more of well, actually I am from, I think you use the temporary state. No, you use the permanent state. But you can distinguish that. You can distinguish a temporary state versus a more permanent state of your state of being, which is native to Spanish and other Latin-based languages, but not, English.
So in Latin, there's the I am this or I am here temporarily, and then there's also the permanent state, which means I am this, or this is how I identify with this thing, or, so I am a man or I am recording a podcast would be the temporary or permanent state.
I am recording a podcast would be temporary. I'm a podcaster would likely be a permanent state.
Interesting. Which kind of likens back to our earlier episode of I'm a skier, even though I haven't skied in 8 years or whatever.
Yes, absolutely.
At what point do you need to surrender the title or the identity, I am a skier?
I'll never give it up, I promise.
Never, ever. And so when we say, who am I, probably most people would respond with some sort of combination of I am my body, I am my thoughts, I am my words, or I am my actions, I am my behaviors, depending on their perspective. But this seems like a sort of a limited perspective of yourself, and those things are constantly changing, are they not?
Yeah.
Well, so another one that I think of is when someone says, "How are you doing?" And it's usually a temporary state, like how are you in the moment? One of the thoughts that I had in relation to the how is who you are is how are you doing, and it's usually in a temporary state of what are you doing or how are you doing in the moment. Someone asked me this question, and I went into this prattle about all of my 4 girls, and they are like, "That's so cute. You're such a cute dad that when you care about your children, but really, how are you doing? I want to know about you." And I was like, I don't have an identity except for my daughters. What am I supposed to do? And in that moment, like, I just felt like my life was wrapped up in their life. That's all I could be. But it was very courteous for them to re-ask the question. No. How are you doing? What are you up to? What's going on in your life?
Not what is happening in your life or what are your life circumstances.
Right. And it's an interesting question when someone says that it's such a natural thing. I haven't seen you in X amount of days or months.
Right.
How are you doing? We can take it 16 different ways.
I know, it feels like for me, when I hear people ask that question, it feels like, please report on your current emotional outlook on the circumstances of your life.
Yes.
Are you happy right now?
Do you want to see a crying Jag, or do you want to keep this in polite conversation?
I know, right? I had a boss at a job, and he'd always say, terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah. Completely deadpan. How's it going? Terrible. He was in charge of the humanitarian department, so he'd start talking about some humanitarian crisis across the world. And
oh, wow.
It was hilarious to watch.
But it's interesting you bring that up, Spencer, because we've tugged on this thread a few times of are we our actions, are we our life circumstances. And so when you have when you have such an investment and such a interest, I guess, in those parts of your life, your family and your daughters, it's easy to want to focus on that and not look at the question of how am I actually doing? Like, what does that seem like? What does that feel like for me?
Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I wonder, are they asking, who am I? Or, I mean, that's totally a personal assumption.
No, I like that. Because
who am I right now based on what I've been up to?
I was having to talk with a friend about basically people saying, are you happy? And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm not really trying to seek happiness probably in the way that you're thinking. It feels elusive. There's always, I don't want to be in a state of distress.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, my life is great. Everything is going the way I want it to. I'm going to move us on. I think there's a lot of good thoughts here, but there's 2 things I want to say. We're going to talk about ways to explore who am I, and I kind of just realized something, that some of them are going to be about, it feels like process of elimination. We're going to be talking about things and saying, is this you? Maybe not. Is this you? Maybe not. So I think that's going to be really interesting. But before we get to there, there's one big, fat, giant caveat I want to get into before we get into all the introspection.
Ooh.
And it has to do with the biases that make it difficult for us to understand ourselves, or straight up impossible. Because we were talking about who's the I. Is it that the rational or the conscious part of your brain? Is that you? Because that part of you, that part of your brain, is technically blind to a lot of stuff that's happening in the rest of your brain. And I think a dashboard of a car is actually a good metaphor for this, because you don't have things on your dashboard for every single thing going on in your engine.
Right.
Otherwise, your dashboard would be bigger than your engine.
No one could read it.
No one could read it. Here's the structural integrity of this wire.
Can't wait until we get a metalhead who says, I am definitely checking the timing of the firings of my fourth cylinder. Thank you very much, ignorant computer person.
But you know what? I mean, gosh, if they've installed that on their dashboard, then, that's
a bit
great
much
for them. But my dashboard, or in other words, my prefrontal cortex, is not big enough for that many widgets.
So, Thomas, tell us, what are the common limitations we have when it comes to introspection and thinking in general, I would say?
Yeah, well, the first one is mental model theory, which I've probably talked about like 6 times. You have mental models of other people in your head, kind of like sock puppets. They're informed by a lot of memories and like constructions of how you think people act and behave.
Yeah.
But you also have one of yourself. So you have models in your head of other people, but you also have a model in your head of yourself. And
so a self-stereotype almost.
Yeah. And that's what your the speaking or the conscious part of your brain pulls from to describe, like, actually partially the answer to how are you? You're like checking that little sock puppet you have of yourself.
Checking the scarecrow to see if there's a smiley face painted on the front of it.
Is the scarecrow smiling?
All I know that it's never done anything wrong and is a good boy. I'm a good boy, Thomas.
And Chris is now a dog.
Woof, woof, woof.
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Why won't they tell me?
I am. Jeez, I just told you.
So, 3 big ones: introspection illusion, self-serving bias, and bias blind spot. So introspection illusion, this has to do with overestimating your ability to accurately understand your own mental processes.
So we might be having many more mental processes than we can remember, or we might believe that those mental processes are actually different than how they appear to us.
Yes, but especially the second one. Like, it's not this that there's, well, actually, part of it is that there's way more mental processes going on, like exponentially more than you could be aware of consciously.
Maybe in your brain, Thomas. I'm a simple folk.
I have read through that phrase, overestimating your ability to accurately understand your own mental processes, like 6 times while you guys are talking, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. I'm like, I don't know if I get it. And I think that's meta to the idea in this one, which is sometimes we think our body or our brain are able to do more than we think it's supposed to be able to.
Are able to do what?
Be able to do more than we think it's supposed to. Is that what it's?
That's a similar phenomena. That's like when people think that everything's within their willpower.
Yeah.
But this is
so
more
is
about like when you ask a kid, why did you do that? The part of their brain that is good at developing stories eventually learns how to develop stories to explain any action. Your ability to create a story to describe what you're doing or why you're thinking something does not directly correlate to why you did it and why you're thinking it. So I was talking to a therapist once, and he was like, you're the expert on your own life. And I'm like, well, I might be the expert on my own subjective experience that I'm able to communicate from that part of my brain, but that doesn't mean that the conscious part of me is doing a good job reading the rest. So that's what it's saying is...
Come join my doubt parade.
Come join my doubt parade. Yeah, and then I talk about how, hey, this doubt also is sometimes a little crippling, so I need to find a balance. So Spencer...
I wish I could hear you, but my doubt can't hear you.
My doubt can hear. So, Spencer, does that make it make more sense? You think you understand yourself way better than you actually do.
Yeah, and I guess then what is...
Did I just drop a nuke on the whole aspect of introspection?
What is the therefore,
I think you may have broken my brain, but maybe there's a what is the therefore as well.
Well, I'll start with one therefore. One therefore is some introspection is better than
no introspection.
Imperfect and
derailed.
No, it's all right. The imperfect introspection that you are capable of is better than giving up on it entirely because you know it's not perfect. It is better to introspect than to not introspect.
Walk a path carefully.
Yes. And this is kind of the big warning is you don't want to commit too hard to understanding something.
Or in a conclusion.
In a conclusion. I mean, some people will do this with like mental health diagnoses. They'll be like, oh, I see these, and I'm talking about people a lot more than doctors, so doctors do it too. We'll see symptoms and be like, oh, I've got ADHD.
Right.
And then they harp on ADHD for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to keep us... Or you share that thought, Chris, and then I'm going to keep us moving so that we can move to number 3.
Sure, and I would say that grabbing onto conclusions is a very common also part of our mental habit of we need the answer because someone's waiting for the answer, and if I find an answer that explains one or two things, then I will bring it in and try to use it to explain everything, when in fact I might be overestimating how real that conclusion is and overestimating my own reading of it, I guess, or my own thinking about it, because I would prefer a false conclusion to the unknowing feeling.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the biggest biases is we want to feel safe by feeling like we understand.
Yes.
Because it's happening in our head, we think we do. Bias, that's like bias blind spot, overpowering blindness to your own biases, likely related to confidence and identity preservation. So we tell a lot of stories to maintain a sense of confidence and maintain a sense of identity, which has a use to keep us functional.
And is that the point of life, functionality?
I walk the line a lot and tumble off the side of doubt because I'm questioning myself so hard.
Is that, I want to take it back to the kid. Why did you drop that? Why did you spill that? Why did you do that thing? And a lot of the time the kid will do what adults call as lying, but I've seen a lot of parent and child therapists like, dude, they're not lying. Yes, they're making up a story, but they're not intentionally lying to deceive. They're generating a story to which is a kind of what these 3 limitations is where they're generating for self-preservation.
Right.
Because I need a conclusion. If the kid says, I don't know, it's unsatisfactory with the parent. So they're going to make something up, and in some ways, how are you doing is just as bad as why did you do that when you were a kid? Because it's like, I don't want to tell you that I don't know how I'm doing. I have an inconclusive answer to that question.
I haven't thought about it until right now, and thinking about it might touch these sore spots or painful pieces that I am doing everything in my power to avoid and keep under the table.
And thus, I lie to you.
And thus, I am well. I hope you are doing well, too.
Yes.
It's and that's what we all do that when we're answering questions. We confabulate a justification or an explanation. We come up with a story. That can be a story based on, some like actual data that your subconscious is giving you. Yeah. But we've already talked about all these other factors that mess it up. Preserving your identity, sense of safety, making sure that you don't get yelled at. But in psychology, they call that confabulation, which is the process of coming up with a story to explain something. And the part of your brain that does that, its primary job is to justify. It is to explain, not to explain accurately. We can teach it to be more accurate, but that's not its default purpose. Its default purpose is to not get yelled at by dad.
Or I wonder if we can even pause and search for the actual answer within ourselves, because that's such a common, or is such an uncommon response to these things, as we expect everything to have speedy sound bites and the quick dialogue that we see in television shows, which of course is completely not spontaneous in 99% of cases. But we see this modeled so often that we believe that pausing to actually think about a response to a question is a negative attribute or some sort of social mistake.
It's like somebody asks you a question and you're like, let me think about that for a second. Okay, here's my thought.
Exactly.
And there's that moment of awkwardness, and I've seen the faces on people, and they're like, are you gonna?
Oh yeah, this is the Thomas which would turn around in elevators just for social experiments, and so he is often experimenting on his fellow citizens. data.
And so
that's the bias blind spot, where we might not even know what underlying factors are creating the stories that we're inventing that we tell ourselves. Because, when you're a kid, when you're growing up, there's so much that goes into identity formation and how we think and how we believe, including the language that you're speaking, which often or almost always has baked in assumptions about the universe, about the world, and about interacting, like we talked earlier of Latin versus English. And so with the bias blind spot, I'm not sure if we actually want to go into what biases am I carrying into this conversation?
I think we've done a good high-level discussion of that just right now, and we've got other episodes. We've talked about those before. It's been a big focus of my research, so it's come up quite a bit. So I'm actually going to... self-serving bias I've mentioned basically in passing. It has to do with protecting your confidence and identity, but...
I'm a good boy.
I'm a good boy. Dang it. Sometimes my wife, JC, she says, I don't care. And I say, is that an observation or a goal?
And I say to that, why not both?
I say, I don't care.
Well, that's one great thing. And I remember back when Chris and I worked at Schmoop, we had Owen. He always talked about self-creation and creating yourself instead of just discovering and defining yourself. Like, you are a changeable thing. And that's why I kind of like your response, Spencer. Like, why not both?
Yeah.
This can change. You don't need to treat any of this like it's solid.
Carved in stone.
Yeah. So I want to dive into, there's a bunch of ways of asking these questions, and I want to spend the rest of the podcast on that. But I'm going to kind of put these, I'm not going to say 3 categories, but they're like 3 methods-ish. There's introspection, just sitting and thinking with yourself. Writing is another form of introspection, but it gives you It's like extra brain space. It gives you stuff to see and reflect on. Writing is great. It's like an expansion to the brain. The last one is talking with others. And in talking about biases before, we've talked about you're blind to the log in your eye, but you can see the speck in someone else's. So sit together and look into each other's eyes.
Ooh.
And talk to each other. I say that metaphorically, but I've heard there are benefits to doing it literally.
And that is a very powerful practice of sitting in front of another person and them continually asking you just the question, who are you?
Yeah.
And you having to respond. But
so those are some of the contexts you can ask these questions. And we're gonna dive into some of these now. I'm gonna start with this is to help challenge your image of yourself. Comparing your behavior with your self-image. Like, do my actions match what I believe my goals are?
I had the question last night. Would it be better to have no morality than a morality that is applied haphazardly?
What do you mean
no
by that?
morality versus a morality that's applied haphazardly?
As in a morality that you don't apply universally, which I think is kind of similar to this, where it's, I guess the question of this, I believe this about myself, but I behave this way. So is that belief true or false? And should the belief change or should the action change, or do neither need to change and I just need to be?
I want to recall what you said earlier, which was walk the path carefully.
Yeah.
I think. What about walking the path at all? And yes, walking the path carefully would be ideal. Does that come inherently when you start walking the path at all?
So, are you talking about challenging? Are you challenging the goal of answering the question, "Who am I?"
I'm saying that if you use the tool, who am I, to try and affect a behavioral change in the human personality, that may be a short-term use for it, but it is not the full use of the question. Because I feel like that's baked into the question of, my behavior with my self-image. And so there's like 3 different ways that could result in. And 1, my behavior and my self-image are completely aligned 100%. Praise the Lord.
Me.
He is risen. Whatever. 2, my behavior does not match my self-image, right? And for me, my mental process is always a therefore, which I always say is the most dangerous word in the human dictionary because it implies all sorts of things.
It implies that there is an answer and a definitely, therefore you should X.
Right. A reason into I would almost say compulsive action or compulsive self-condemnation in most of our cases, as the mind is inherently negative. Don't eat the red mushroom in the forest.
Yep. Chill. Cousin Grog, who was way too chill, he died and didn't have any kids. Or he did have kids, and he passed on the genes of not worrying about the red mushrooms. And all of his kids died.
Someone had to eat the red mushroom.
Someone had to eat it first.
But what's your take on the comparing behavior with self-image, Spencer?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about it is I'm getting stuck on is it better to have a no morality versus a chaotic morality? with the idea, I guess I want to be hopeful in humanity for a second, that
sure,
yes, your morality isn't applied consistently or accurately every single time. But at least you're applying it. And if, maybe the key word is introspective, which we've used multiple times. If you're able to observe, are you able to decide, last time I did that, it didn't work, or it hurt someone. I'm going to do better next time.
Well, a little bit baked into that, if you don't mind, one more thread being tugged, is whether goodness is innate or whether goodness is a side effect of morality.
Oh crap, man. We're getting into some philosophical nonsense that I don't want to do just because it's going to challenge my self-image.
One thing I love about that, though, is we have some pretty strong subconscious moral instincts, and we will assign things as good or bad based on those. So by exploring that, you can free yourself from, oh, I'm actually thinking that if I am sick and I stay home from work and I don't make money that day, no, I'm getting emotional because this is me right now, that I'm bad.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to mention that I just picked up Magic the Gathering cards and playing it for the first time because I feel like it's so unproductive, but yet it's something fun and something I can do for myself with people.
Yeah.
That I'm afraid to mention that I'm doing something. So when someone just in the last couple of weeks, how are you doing? What have you been up to? I'm like, I just got into Magic the Gathering. You're going to call me a nerd in a second. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm doing good. You know. Yeah.
So are you going to start streaming and getting sponsors and have it replace your day job?
No.
Are you going to go to tournaments and win money?
No, but
then why are you doing it?
Yeah, well, and that one, and I don't know if that's boomers to millennials or if that's just old people to corporate, corporate life to capitalism.
Usually it's old people to young people. Just talking about generation, just talking about generation shenanigans in general. It's usually older people to younger people.
Yeah, and you look at someone and they're doing something like, oh, you should make money doing that. And it's like, no, I want to do it for the joy of just enjoying it and being able to do it. And, my backdrop in all of these videos that we do, that we don't do the video, is a whole bunch of board games. Half of them are unopened because I want to play them with people. But man, and so I got them one day in hopes of playing them, but I haven't ever gotten around to playing them. So
I'll have to drop one of my friends who just got let go from his company, vibe coded a board game app that lets you list your board games and try to find people to play them with locally. So,
oh, good. I was afraid you were going to say try to sell them.
No.
You should make money off of your board games.
Well, it's interesting. I'm working on some other side projects, and one of them was the rebranding of the primordial sins as virtues, and the rebranding of avarice or greed as hustle culture or productivity mindset was one of the great things that came out of that, as if gathering gold is some sort of appreciable or positive virtue.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. That's
I'd drop another reference of the Dow's over 50,000, but I don't want to get into that. So if you know, you know.
Well, I thought the Dow was not the Dow. Wait, wrong Dow. You're talking.
Whoops.
You're not talking DAO or TAO. Tau.
When I talk about the Dow, Thomas, I'm always talking about the Dow. Even the Dow is the Dow, but the Dow is not the Dow, but the Dow's Dow is Dow.
For those who don't know, Taoism is a spiritual movement full of delightful, indefinable shenanigans.
Yes.
Speaking of, that have to do with exploring questions, honestly, and answers.
Exactly.
And that's one reason this podcast is called The Questionistas, because I think, though I sometimes get, slowed down or crippled a little bit by them, questions are way more useful than answers. And that's a big thing about this whole exercise, or all of these exercises, is the act of asking the question and exploring the space is more useful than a therefore that you print out and put on your wall.
The questioning can be more expanding than the answering.
Oh, I mean, I would expand. Mhm. I would expand your point, modify your point. Not only can it be, it is. It just is.
So I'm gonna have to cancel the sponsored pillows that we got called Questionista's Chicken Soup for the Soul. Because I guess we're in the business of questions, not comfort.
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend. He said we need to get like T-shirts of people holding gallons of salt and guzzling them.
Ugh.
Because we've been saying at the beginning of the podcast, take our words with a gallon of salt.
Oh, dragons drinking.
Our
gallons
fans
of
will be
salt.
salt guzzlers.
You hear that? The three of you listening? Womp womp.
We don't count, Chris.
Oh, darn it. What?
So one of the thoughts, I'm going to bring us back home.
Please bring us back.
To what we're talking about. Please bring us back. One of the thoughts I had is whether introspection or extrospection, when other people are challenging what you say and what you believe. One of the observations I have, if you go on TV and news and political news, it's more prominent.
Yeah.
But just about any person on the news or any person on captured on camera and saying, "Hey, you said this, you believe this. Are you serious?" Like, and in some ways it's like,
it's a trap.
You do realize that that's a really bad idea. And yet they double down on it and they say, yeah, absolutely. And then they just double and triple down on it. And I'm not picking anyone in general, but you've already figured someone in your brain that you saw just in the last week where they've doubled down on their belief system instead of saying,
right,
let me think about that for a minute. That's a really good point. Or, there's opportunity for us to think about this differently. And I was wrong in the past. Right. And I feel like one of the things that we're trying to do with either getting away from the biases that we've talked about or getting away from logical fallacies is in hopes that at some point we can say, what I used to believe was X, I now believe Y.
And even then, I'm not 100% sure about why.
And even then, I'm not fully sure because I don't know who I am. And I learn about myself every single day. And so when it's a morality thing, and let's just say it's a complete morality thing, and it somehow doesn't affect anyone in the world except for you, it still hopefully is something that we're thinking about in a way that allows us to grow with it instead of letting it define us.
So in normal circles, what do you call, or what do you say someone is when they're not willing to change their mind?
Thomas.
Like you're talking to a kid and they're just stubborn.
Oh,
Yay!
Stubborn. Okay, I was like, where are you going with this? I don't know.
I was committing the cardinal sin of questions, which is asking a question looking for a specific answer.
Of course.
But it's actually not a sin. There's actually times for that tactic. But in certain circles, I will say religious and political and maybe even sports teams, being unwilling to change your mind is called conviction.
Yeah.
Faith.
Versus being able to, and I love this phrase, bend with the wind. Like, work with reality as it is. Okay. I'm going to pause there. Work with reality as it is. I want to bring us back, make sure that we get to this part about narrowing down the who isn't I. We talked about comparing your behavior with your self-image. I want to talk more, and we've got some examples here. I want to talk more about these questions you can ask yourself and how you can explore them. So we've got a few, like what isn't I, with sub-questions in there. Who is having that thought?
So when you're asking what am I, what will happen if you ask yourself that question, you can do it now, listener, if you wish, is your mind will probably produce a thought. And that thought either comes in the form of, seeing text or hearing a response or some sort of feeling. And for most of us, that, who am I, will be something around the body, where I am my body, or I am some secondary thing from the body. I am my actions, I am my thoughts, I am my behaviors, I am the change that the body brings into the world. I'm centered around my head. And that, that's a fine first response to the question, who am I? But you can drop that and keep asking deeper, because this body was kind of generated. We know how it's generated. Sperm meets egg, joy happens, and then it gets born, and then the body's made of food and air and water and sunlight, essentially. And so is that you? Like, are you limited to just this body, this time-bound pile of clay, as we might have said? Or is it something more?
Well, and I don't have an image of myself in my head as an angry person. But in reality, I get touchy, like an exposed nerve, and somebody makes too much noise, somebody doesn't follow a process the way I like, I can snap.
Yeah.
I've learned how to shorten those outbursts. Am I an angry person? Is that anger a part of me? Is that something happening to me? The mental model I have in my head wants to say, no, that's just something that's just happening to me, but
right,
it's coming from my skull. So, is that anger a part of my identity, or is the thought? And that I kind of want to bring it back a little bit to the animals again, because we're getting to the point of process of elimination now. Because one thing I like about the "Who am I?" question, and you look at the answers and you say, "What if I'm not that?"
Right.
Now ask it again. Who am I? Okay, what if I'm not that?
And this is one of the oldest spiritual practices, over 10,000 years old, which is called neti neti, which is not this, not that. Where you take whatever comes up and you say, well, what if I'm not this? Because in that system, there is an unbroken reality. There is a fundamental isness which cannot be broken. And so one way to that fundamental understanding beyond questioning is to question everything. Because even if you try to question that, you cannot destroy it with questioning. Like, you cannot disprove it through questioning, but only by discarding everything else can you find that which can never be discarded.
I'll give a metaphor. It's like in Minecraft. When for those who don't play it, this metaphor should still work. You're digging in the ground.
Yeah.
You're digging, and eventually you hit the bedrock. You cannot dig it.
Very nice.
It is not deconstructible.
That also sounds very similar to the scientific method, which is you test things to debunk your hypotheses.
Yes.
And quite often you are going to go through hundreds or thousands of tests before you come to the right conclusion by ruling out every other option.
Nice.
And even then,
exactly.
Humans have a nature to pick a therefore and have it as an absolute, but science as an industry has developed a habit of there is no right answer. There's a best answer for now.
Mm-hmm. A working hypothesis.
Yeah, and you can have individual humans very easily, even experts, slide right back into that habit of, I'm right, this is how it is.
Someone's got to publish papers, Thomas.
Oh, I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about the Jordan Petersons. Oops, I shouldn't tell people what to think on this. Just kidding. I'll tell you what to
Or
think
call
on that.
out
Jordan
specific
Peterson's
people.
a jackass. Anyway, yeah, there's a whole
That
series
poor
of
soul.
that poor soul. But is he the things that he says? Did I just define him by something that I shouldn't have, and then judge him on it?
And did your brain create that for your own self-satisfaction, or is your brain creating that because you see something in his behavior that you want to deny about your own behavior and way of thinking?
That one always made me laugh. like the whole, like, you see in others what's a flaw in yourself, or
Right.
no, and I'm like, are you saying that we're only capable of seeing flaws that we have? There's a lot of research that kind of, I think, says that that's. I think lots of people have plenty of capability to see flaws that they don't have and that they do have. Like, I don't think that there's a special bias towards, oh yeah, you're extra capable of noticing flaws that you have, but that you have subconsciously. I don't know. I don't want to spiral out there, but I always thought that was an interesting phrase. Is like, what is it? Every accusation is a confession.
Right.
You're just projecting. Well, talking about just projecting, I think it goes both ways as well. And let me give you an example of an exercise that you can do. Instead of saying what are things that you hate about other people, those are things that you actually hate about yourself. Do the opposite. What are things that you admire about other people? Those are actually traits that you embody. You are your biggest critic in that you criticize. You're like, oh, I'm not good at those things. But I had a friend go through that exercise with me and my kids.
Yeah.
And then we wrote that all down. And then she says, okay, right now, say, I am good at this. I am this, I am this, I am this, I am this.
Oh, cool.
And it was really powerful to realize, man, one, we don't do that a lot because we only spend time on the I don'ts or I suck at. And we don't spend the time on I am this, I am good at this. And even if they're not 100% true, man, is it just empowering to spend time doing that a little bit more than we do.
Well, that relates to, I think I've talked about in other episodes before too, but that's like the more positive side of the comparing your behavior with your self-image.
Yeah.
You're looking, I mean, part of that exercise seems like it could be like aspirational. Like you see these good traits in other people and you talk about you having those good traits and it can help you have them.
Yeah.
But also like, no, I'm not a very good person. Like I don't know. I'm not really whatever. And then you talk to somebody else and they're like, no, you helped me with X, Y, and Z. You showed me you cared in this way, or you think that you're bad at conversations, but I love having conversations with you.
Yeah.
And so this is where the positive side of the introspection danger comes in. I guess you can not only do you miss the log or the beam in your own eye, you miss the diamond in your eye too.
No, well said.
And that's one thing that it kind of relates to the benefits of overconfidence. In a way, overconfidence is thinking that I can do more than a realist would say I can do.
Right.
But that's assuming that a realist has an accurate model of the universe.
And in some ways, us classifying someone as a realist is a mental model that we've applied to someone that they really probably aren't realists or optimists or whatever label that we've already given them.
Right. So I guess my point with the overconfidence part is if no matter what, your model of the world, hit my microphone. If no matter what, your model of the world is going to be wrong or incomplete, then not to a ridiculous level, but go ahead and act as if you are better, happier, more capable than you think you are. Because in some areas, you are incorrect about yourself.
Right.
You are a better conversationalist than you thought. That's sheesh. This is what I was going through before we got into this podcast was
Right. This is the genesis.
right. That me having this model in my head of like, I'm not good enough to do this.
Right.
I don't know enough.
Mm-hmm. And here we are 17 episodes in, successfully talking about all of the things he wanted to talk about.
Yes. Oh, like seriously, guys, like I'm gonna cry. This is just delightful.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
We're doing it. I think. Okay, well, first off, I'll be slightly meta here for a second. I want to talk about the quote by a pseudo spiritualist. Do you guys have anything else on the other stuff before we proceed to that and probably wrap up?
Well, I was going to go into your earlier example of anger in the body and whether that's a physical phenomena, whether that's a mental phenomena, or, whatever else. But maybe let's just pull your thread instead. Or I can go on that.
I want to hear that.
Okay. So, kind of changing topics, Thomas, you mentioned earlier, I'm in a loud room and a lot of things are happening and anger arises in the body, right? And so am I an angry person? And I think that happens on several levels because it happens to me too, where there's the physiological, the bodily response to sensation. And at a certain point, the body automatically goes into danger if the intensity of a sensation is too high. So, if someone strokes your arm, well, in some cases that feels dangerous depending on the context, but that's very different than if someone grabs your arm and shakes your body. That would likely produce a very high intensity level. And I think that we have levels of sensitivity and levels of reactivity in our bodies that are quite innate. And one part of this is we're not aware of it unless we're paying attention to how our mood is changing. Two, it's socially inconvenient in most places saying, hey, you guys are too loud. Can you stop talking? Or this conversation is making me uncomfortable. Can we change the tone of it? And I think, so part of it, I think, is physiological. Like it's just your bodily response to try and recreate a sense of safety. And like we talked about, anger is action, is fight, right? And so that's a safety thing. On the second level of that is the mental, where someone says something that either challenges our own assumption or challenges what we want to have happening or challenges our personality. And then that creates a discomfortable shift because you have a counter thought what's happening is counter to what you expected to have happen. And so one of my old mentors would always say, anger and frustration is unmet expectations. And so that's kind of like
say that slow and importantly.
Anger and frustration is unmet expectations.
Okay. Thank you.
As in, we expected this meeting or this conversation, or we expected our kid not to knock over the glass and
somebody to follow the speed limit and use a turn signal.
Right. All of our hidden rules about driving that we think are correct and universal, but are actually quite local and context dependent.
Just in case you can't hear it, I'm frowning right now. Because A, I don't like it, and B, he's right.
So sad. And so I feel like when we talk about anger and we talk about all these other, what some people would call negative attributes, you have to understand what level are these things happening on. And sometimes the behavior that we're not doing is actually asking for help. Like we're unaware that this situation is becoming so untenable that we're going to have to react emotionally instead of noticing the discomfort and verbalizing it. Like, hey, this is getting out of hand. I'm uncomfortable right now. I mean, I'm wondering, for our listeners, how many times have you heard that phrase said in your life in the last month of someone saying, hey, this is making me uncomfortable?
I remember you doing that. And I mean, you've done it with me too. in meetings and things at our
Sure.
at our job. And
So short answer, 0 for me.
Yeah.
But tell me, Thomas, I would love to hear about when and how Chris used that. Or Chris, tell me about being able to say, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And
I think it just comes from a sense of honesty and a sense of being able to say it before it starts mutating into a feeling that I prefer not to have. And for me, it's feeling it in myself, but also seeing it in everyone else's faces, you know? And I would say that takes a little bit of courage and honesty to say that, not trying to...
You're putting your social standing at risk.
Right.
yeah.
Like, hey, I'm putting my cards on the table. Like, this is how I feel right now. And it's, for some strange reason, seen as either rude or socially unacceptable to say these things of like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, even though I would wager almost everyone is feeling something every second of every day.
You're feeling the tension of addressing the needs of yourself and the needs of the group. That's what that tension is. You're trying not to screw up the group, but you're suffering.
Right.
I'm thinking of one time, like this is how frequently I've done this, where I can count it on one hand. And Thomas, you were there when we worked together. And I said, I feel like you have enlisted a whole bunch of airplane pilots to man and navigate a submarine with the project that you're asking us to do.
I remember.
Wow.
Do you remember this?
Yes.
And do you remember what his response was? And I saw it on his face. He regretted immediately after he said it. But do you remember what his response was?
Oh, maybe I'm mixing up a different time, because the response I'm remembering is a deadpan look of not understanding what you're saying.
Well, there was that, but then he had to respond, and he says, "Well, maybe this isn't the right job for you. Maybe we didn't hire the right person."
Oh,
and
my gosh!
Maybe you are not a worthy person.
Yeah, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I hate this person now. I've lost all respect for him." But like, am I going to get fired because I tried to express my vulnerability? Right.
And that's the key, expressing your vulnerability, because the mind feels vulnerable at all times and does everything in its power to
not feel
over that vulnerability with thoughts and frameworks and biases and all these beliefs.
That's like evolutionary psychology in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
The world is scary as hell, and so I'm going to do everything I can to make it not scary, some of which is deluding myself.
Well, and it's too bad, because the mind thinks it's actually running everything. When it's just sitting in the sidecar, it's a backseat passenger. It's actually not running a darn thing. It's just doing commentary on what's actually happening. And so it's sad, actually, that we have this highly evolved intelligence that is pointed and confused about its role in the actual universe, because it thinks that it's in control of everything, and if it could just find the right combination of thoughts and behaviors, then everything would be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But the only imperfection is believing that there is imperfection instead of just seeing things exactly as they are.
You
just said.
The old 50-50.
Yeah, 50-50, the net neutral. So I'll just be silent now.
Welcome to the silent podcast, where we come on and stay silent for
listen
about
to
an hour.
Ambience.
You're welcome.
Shoot, what was it? We were talking about, oh yes, as I like to say, these biases, or that desire to feel like you understand and you control, they evolved to help us survive. We've gotten to the point that we're pretty dang good at surviving as a species now.
Yeah.
We have the potential for so much more. And that's where these new attitudes come in. That attitudes that you can learn, even if they feel unnatural. Right. Attitudes that you can learn, Because something that is natural is the flexibility of your brain. We developed that to survive, but now we can do so much more with it than we ever, us or our relatives or our ancestors ever could. We can find, inner peace. We can live lives that are not only, productive when they need to be, but relaxed when they can be. We can learn to change the way we think to get out of the constant stress of survival and focusing on negativity. That's one wonderful thing about our minds, is that, yeah, we've got a lot of baggage with them, but also, like, we can do a lot.
Certainly. And we have to be aware that doing a lot doesn't always mean the mechanical activity in the sensory world. There's actually mind expanding things that we have very little contemporary information about, and even if we had all the information, it would be difficult to explain, because our minds are actually capable of experiences which are beyond words, thoughts, actions, and deeds, which is, we said,
and
difficult to talk about.
Yeah, and that's something that our ancestors had, even like, when you're trying to survive, it's hard to find time to do those kinds of activities that feel like a broader expanding of your mind and things like that. So it's, even though you did talk about it being thousands-year-old tradition, but like, if you're being stabbed and you're in pain, that's not that's pretty hard to do some, like, meditative introspection.
It might bring you back to earth really quick.
Yeah, but so, and I guess that's just kind of maybe the hopeful note I think I'd like to end on is, we have a lot of negative baggage. We can learn to let it go and move on from it and experience something that evolution never, quote, intended for us.
Well, and if you're listening to this podcast, you hopefully have 1 or 2 minutes of free time if you've gotten to this point. And so you've been gifted with the security, the social, physical, economic security to listen to this. And so after this, or at another time, you could start this inquiry of, what am I? What am I not? What is the nature of I? What is the nature of the self? And that can pay unlimited dividends.
You don't have to spend all of your time filling your head with data and noise for you to feel safe and survive. Like our ancestors hunting and gathering, or even later than that, had to do.
Right. Which, like we're saying, and kind of the point of this podcast, can be its own prison adventure land, when you say, oh, I've been born into this time of prosperity and this social structure, and I have so many skills and can do so many things. Why do I find myself doing X, Y, Z when my potential is this other thing? And so I just wanted to acknowledge some of the difficulty of living in an expanded time, which I hope that you, as the listener, forgive yourself for, and understand that whatever you're doing is what is meant to be happening.
Spencer, do you have a final thought? And then I've got a question that I'm going to leave them with.
I think ultimately, I appreciate what Chris is saying, and in saying you've wasted enough of your time listening to the podcast. Spend a couple extra minutes asking yourself, how are you doing? And figure out what that means to you.
That's essentially the question I want to leave you with. I'll do two parts of the question. First is, what are you doing right now to fill your head with noise, to try to feel safe or to feel that you understand the world? And spend some time away from all that, asking yourself, who am I? If not that, who am I? How am I doing? What is I? There's a treasure trove of peace and meaning to be found in exploring that, instead of just sticking to the default habit of data, freak out, negative.
Well said, Thomas. So thank you for listening on whatever platform you're listening. Feel free to drop us a like, comment, subscribe. I'm not sure how these things work these days, but we're always interested if you want to hear more, what you were interested in, and where you're questioning in your life. So thank you for joining us on the Questionistas, and keep asking questions.